Hello everyone, this is R.S. Miller at the endtimenews.org and today is September 3rd, 2013. I want to take this opportunity to thank my friend Julie on Facebook for sharing this article with me. Thanks, Julie. On August 28th, an urgent action memorandum was issued from the office of President Putin to the armed forces of the Russian Federation ordering a massive military strike against Saudi Arabia in the event that the West attacked Syria. According to Kremlin sources familiar with this extraordinary war order, President Putin became enraged after his early August meeting with Saudi Prince Bandar bin Sultan, who warned that if Russia did not accept the defeat of Syria, Saudi Arabia would unleash Chechen terrorists under their control to cause mass death and chaos during the Winter Olympics scheduled to be held in February 2014 in Sochi, Russia. The Lebanese newspaper As-Safir confirmed this amazing threat against Russia, saying that Prince Bandar pledged to safeguard Russia's naval base in Syria if the Assad regime is toppled. But he also hinted at Chechen terrorist attacks on Russia's Winter Olympics in Sochi if there is no accord, he said. I can give you a guarantee to protect the Winter Olympics next year. The Chechen groups that threaten the security of the games are controlled by us. Prince Bandar went on to say that Chechens operating in Syria were a pressure tool that could be switched on and off. These groups do not scare us. We use them in the face of the Syrian regime, but they will have no role in Syria's political future. London's The Telegraph news service further reported today that Saudi Arabia has secretly offered Russia a sweeping deal to control the global oil market and safeguard Russia's gas contracts if the Kremlin backs away from the Assad regime in Syria, an offer Putin replied to by saying, "Our stance on Assad will never change. We believe that the Syrian regime is the best speaker on behalf of the Syrian people, and not those liver eaters," Putin said, referring to footage showing a jihadist rebel eating the heart and liver of a Syrian soldier, and which Prince Bandar in turn warned that there can be no escape from the military option if Russia declines the olive branch. According to a report published by Iranian.com on January 28, 2013, titled "Obama's Plan for World War III Stuns Russia," the Federal Security Services FSB confirmed the validity of the released hacked emails of the British-based defense company Britam Defense that stunningly warned that the Obama administration was preparing to unleash a series of attacks against both Syria and Iran in a move Russian intelligence experts warned could very well cause World War III. With the events now spiraling out of control in Syria, and London's independent news service now reporting that Prince Bandar is pushing for war, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Alexander Lukashevich further warned the West today by stating, "Attempts to bypass the Security Council once again to create artificial groundless excuses for a military intervention in the region are fraught with new suffering in Syria and catastrophic consequences for other countries in the Middle East and North Africa." On August 30th, the EU Times reported that Saudi Arabia goes on full alert as Putin war threat stuns the Muslim world. The main intelligence dictatorate, the GRU, is reporting today that President Putin's orders this week to the armed forces of the Russian Federation for a massive military strike against Saudi Arabia in the event that the West attacks Syria has stunned the Sunni Muslim world and forced the Saudis to go on full war alert. He warned Putin that he would invite wrath from the entire Muslim world if he dared to attempt to harm Saudi Arabia. He demanded Islamabad to sever ties with Moscow since Putin's threats was not meant for Saudi Arabia alone, but was a threat to the entire Muslim Ummah. He said Russian president's threat would be treated as a declaration of war against Islam and a strong jihad would be waged against Russia from all over the world. And an article by the Arabic Al-Ad news service confirmed the Saudis' war alert by further stating, "The Saudi army is on full alert since today due to the increased possibility of a military attack by the U.S. military against Syria. The Ground Force Operation Command of Saudi Arabian Army has ordered all the military units in Saudi Arabia to stand at level 2 alert, and fears were bolstered by recent statements by the Russian President Vladimir Putin in terms of a possible military strike against Saudi Arabia by Moscow." Meantime, according to whatdoesitmean.com, the GRU, the Foreign Military Intelligence Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, has also reported that Pakistan's largest religious political party, Jamaat al-Hadith, JAH for short, is now threatening Russia too over Putin's war order against Saudi Arabia. The Obama regime's rush to attack Syria, this GRU report continued, was dealt a severe blow yesterday after the British Parliament revolted against Prime Minister David Cameron and refused to allow the United Kingdom to participate in any war action against the Syrian people. Though not being told to the American people by the Obama regime or their propaganda mainstream media, according to the report, this GRU report said the unveiling of British support for the Obama regime's planned war against Syria came after new reports from the Associated Press news service related that the chemical weapons attack being investigated by the United Nations were indeed from Saudi Arabia. Infowars.com news service allegedly confirmed this Saudi connection to the chemical weapons being used in Syria. As the Middle East continues to spiral out of control, the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Nimitz, along with 4 destroyers and a cruiser, have been ordered to move west from the Arabian Sea to the Red Sea in support of a U.S. strike on Syria, while the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier remains in the Arabian Sea. Over the weekend, a U.S. amphibious transport ship, the USS San Antonio, was also deployed to the Mediterranean, headed for the U.S. naval base on the Greek island of Crete. Meanwhile, in Israel, record numbers of gas masks have been passed out to the civilian population over the past week or so in preparation for retaliation by the Assad regime should the U.S. strike happen on Syria. In addition, the U.S. and Israel today, on Tuesday, September 3rd, carried out a joint anti-missile test in the Mediterranean to prepare for a possible Syrian-Hezbollah attack on Israel and Jordan in retaliation for the planned U.S. military strike on Syria. U.S. and Israel officials reported that the Israeli Anchor, which is Sparrow, was used as target missile for testing the interceptors. According to Depkafal's military sources, the test demonstrated that since delaying his planned strike on Syria last Sunday, President Barack Obama has revised his plan and instead of a narrow, limited attack, is contemplating a broader offensive for degrading the Assad regime. The arrival of the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier in the Red Sea is further evidence of this intention. The missile trial also indicates an updated U.S.-Israeli consensus that Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah mean business by the mounting level of threats to fire missiles at Israel, Jordan, and Turkey if the Americans go through with their strike against Syria. Such retaliation could lead to the Syrian conflict expanding substantially into a regional war, which Moscow, Tehran, and Damascus have in the last 48 hours admitted was virtually unavoidable. Friends, watch this commentary from August 3rd this year pertaining to the coming nuclear war in the Middle East. Friends, an absolutely horrific war is about to break out in the Middle East, and soon. I'm talking about a war that will involve not only nations in the Middle East region such as Israel, Iran, and Syria, but also the world's superpowers, Russia and the United States, as well as their allies. This war will in effect be World War III, complete with the use of thermonuclear weapons. This war is in fact developing even as we speak. The situation in the Middle East is rapidly deteriorating. The U.S. is watching Iran's presidential election, looking for moderation just ahead of the state's nuclear breakout status. In other words, Netanyahu's red line. According to Bloomberg, the inauguration of Iran's President Rouhani in 2 days restarts the countdown towards a confrontation over the Islamic Republic's nuclear program as it approaches Israel's red line for military action. On September 27th of 2012, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu drew his red line for Iran's nuclear program. At that time, he said that Tehran would be on the brink of a nuclear weapon in less than a year. Well, that red line time for action is fast approaching, and the probability that Israel will carry out their threat of a strike on Iran is very high. Recently, the Russians have sent advanced weaponry to Syria, which Israel had warned that they would take them out, and they did. Is there any doubt that a nuclear-armed Iran would be perceived by Israel as anything less than an existential threat? And truly, it would certainly be the case. The United States has just closed some of its embassies in the Middle Eastern region and issued a worldwide travel warning. The Brits and the French are also taking similar actions, or at least in Yemen they are. Whether it takes place now or later, nuclear war is coming, and the only thing that can prevent this inevitability is permanent peace with the Islamic world. But the Islamists don't want peace with Israel. What they want instead is Israel's total destruction. The Nation of Islam believes that once land becomes Islamic, it will always belong to Islam, and that true believers must reclaim that land at any and all costs. Their creed is to never give up and never make peace with their enemies. In an effort to continue the quest, much like Adolf Hitler did during his reign in Germany, they instill extremism and hatred in their young people. The Palestinians teach their children that the Jews are to be exterminated, that they are rats and pigs. They teach them how the earth itself will cry out for the death of the Jews. There's a song that Palestinian school children learn which helps to inspire this extremism and hatred. The song contains phrases something like this: a tree cry out, "Come, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." And the stone says more or less the same thing. Some Palestinian children are sent to summer camps just like American children. But there is at least one major difference. Their kids are taught military tactics for the sole purpose of attacking and killing Jews. Islam intends to conquer the entire Middle East, and that means Israel must go. Even when the young people are learning geography in school, the maps show the state of Palestine. There is no two-state solution. The nation of Israel doesn't exist. The entire landmass known as Israel, Samaria, Judea, etc., as well as Gaza, are all covered in green colors of Islam, representing the nation of Palestine. The rhetoric that comes from the nation of Islam towards Israel clearly shows their intent. The former Iranian president, and more recently the newly elected Rouhani, as well as some of the leading Islamic clerics, including Ali Khamenei, have all stated in essence that Israel must be wiped off the map. Couple these extreme threats coming from Iran, as well as Hamas and Hezbollah, along with Iran's mad pursuit of acquiring a nuclear bomb and the Iranian leadership's well-established propensity towards lying, and you have a highly volatile situation, one that only requires a spark to engulf the entire world. The mostly Western nations are seeking to bring peace to the region don't realize what's really going on. There will be no permanent peace until Jesus comes back, although there will be the temporary peace of the Antichrist, who is already on the scene, even though he hasn't been revealed yet. It will be short-lived. His brand of peace will consist of a 7-year peace treaty, but will be broken in 3.5 years. Daniel 9:27, speaking of the Antichrist, "Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and offerings." I believe that the rebuilding of the Third Jewish Temple may well be part of this Antichrist peace treaty. The Jews will give up East Jerusalem, which they are fervently against, as well as other segments of Israel, for the guaranteed right to rebuild their temple on the Temple Mount. Currently, the Jews have very little access to their most holy site, which is also one of the icons of the nation of Israel itself. Even now, there's a growing movement among the Jews to retake control of the Temple Mount. In return for granting the Jews the right to rebuild the temple, the Palestinians will gain their much sought-after state of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital. But of course for them, it's only the beginning of the conquest. For them, peace with Israel is not an option. Now, having said that, let me read to you some of what Shraga Blum, an independent journalist, wrote in an article for I-24 TV. Talks with Israel are simply another way of annihilating the Jewish state. The same day that the talks between the Israelis and the Arabs resumed in Washington, a Qassam rocket fired from the Gaza Strip landed in the southwest of Israel. It served as just a little reminder of the equation that has been governing the conflict since its origins more than a century ago. Terrorism has nothing to do with the struggle for peace, and the so-called occupation, quite the contrary. He goes on to write, "Proof can be simply deduced by studying the curve of terrorist acts and comparing it with talks or periods of political deadlock. The immediate conclusion is that the idea that negotiations will reduce violence is swept away by the facts. Israel has bitter experiences in this field. It is precisely during periods of intense diplomatic activity or around the signing of agreements that the number of anti-Israeli attacks grows significantly. The most telling examples of those are of the Oslo Accords in 1993, the Camp David negotiations in 2000, or the Gaza disengagement in 2005. 3 key dates that mark a clear revival of anti-Jewish terrorism. And paradoxically, in periods such as 1996 to 1999, the first term of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, criticized for not doing anything to achieve peace, the number of terror attack victims was the lowest. How is it then that in a paradoxical way, negotiation periods are accompanied by an upsurge of violence by terrorists? Simply because the perpetrators remind the entire world that the origin and purpose of the conflict is to eventually annihilate the state of Israel. Any solution other than that is unacceptable, and therefore, once they smell the protest of an agreement, even a partial one, they resort to violence. Psalm 83 speaks about these people. In verse 1 he states, "Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, and this is who the who is. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Jabal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined them. Permanent peace in the Middle East is merely a pipe dream. War is coming, and it's coming sooner than most think. But you might ask, how can I say that it's going to be a nuclear war? Well, without going into much detail, the answer is quite rational. Number one, Israel is not going to simply fade away into the sunset. Number two, the Nation of Islam is not going to tolerate the existence of Israel indefinitely, and their religious beliefs prevent them from making any serious peace agreements. Number three, from a natural perspective, Israel will not be able to stand against an onslaught of modern Arab armies and their allies all striking at the same time. It would in effect be Israel's last stand. If they lose this coming battle, they will lose their nation, and Israel will cease to exist. This scenario would literally put Israel's back against the wall, and that would cause them to launch nuclear weapons. Just ask yourselves this question. If the situation that Israel finds itself facing were reversed, would America, France, or Great Britain push that big red button? The fact is that any country with nuclear weapons in their arsenal and faced with their own extinction from foreign forces would, as a last resort at least, use those weapons. So what makes anyone think that Israel would not do the same? Peace in the Middle East is unobtainable by mankind. The opposite of peace is war. The opposite of love is hate. And the opposite of heaven is hell. Are you saved? If you desire to be assured of your own salvation, then follow the link below and pray the prayer with a sincere heart, and you will be saved. May God bless you.